Welcome, everyone. We wanted to do a video today as Trump has nominated his VP, Ohio Senator JD Vance. And Jerry, we instantly started diving in saying, who is this guy and will he be good for gold?
Yeah.
Uh, the first thing I found is that he is partnered with Peter Thiel of Palantir
Oh,
on a company, uh, private asset, is it? I believe, and they've invested in Rumble. They invested in
Naria, right? Naria?
Mark Wahlberg's app, Halo or
Okay.
Hallow,
Yep.
right? A prayer app. They've also invested in different technologies. And it seems very interesting. You can take a look at that. I'll put the name of it in the notes. But
This
I
is
thought
the
that was
same
kind of
Peter
interesting.
Thiel from Palantir.
Yeah, the same one who basically front ran the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. He was one of the first people to pull his money out. But
Hmm.
remember, several years ago, his company bought a lot of gold as well, right? So we know that he's conservative, where he likes to put his money. I think they sold their gold,
They
if
did
I'm not
in
mistaken,
23. They made
but
a slight profit. It's $50 million worth of gold.
they sold way too soon, obviously.
Oh.
So that's some of the things that we saw. We've seen some other interviews with him and Jerome Powell, and he's been a little critical of mostly the regulation, right?
Yeah. A lot to do
Um,
with the regulation. Yeah.
what else did you find on your dig?
Well, I did dig, and it was really the timing of it all. Just last week, Vance is on the Senate Banking Committee. Last week, they had the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell grilled as he testified before the Senate Banking Committee. And Vance was a newer member of the
Okay.
committee, and who he is, he's always been a staunch believer that the Federal Reserve and its low interest rate policies and quantitative easing has helped inflate prices in the US, even around the world, such as stock bubbles, real estate bubbles, and really making it difficult for the ordinary people, for the ordinary woman and man to afford homes and even save for retirement. And his view, I think, for the Federal Reserve's role, it needs to be rethought on how they manage the economy. He advocates policies that would prioritize the economic well-being of all American workers and the broader economy over the interests of a few in the financial markets. He really hones in on the border as it relates to inflation. So inflation is a hot topic, and he most recently, I think in March, he brought up the importance and even some of the downside of having the U.S. as the world's reserve currency status. So for me personally, having my background in currencies, this is where I believe the election of or having him Vance as the VP pick. I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more focus on the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, one other thing I saw was that he was critical of the Federal Reserve's regulatory stuff,
Yeah,
basically saying why are they involved in any anything regulatory at all. The person he was discussing that with was also kind of critical and basically said it would just be good if they weren't involved and they had um, sort of less duties and tasks. So
yeah,
I think the takeaway for me is that he would be pro changing the Federal Reserve up, and I think just the fact that he's looking to make changes at the Federal Reserve says a
mhm,
lot. Um,
yeah.
on another note, I noticed, now this was before he was senator, but Ohio is one of those states that remove taxes on gold and silver.
Gold and silver sales. Yeah,
So that also just kind of says a little bit about where he's from in that respect and what they might think about gold. There was
yeah.
one other thing. Did you see something about him and the Bank of International Settlements?
With regards to Basel III rules,
Yeah.
yeah, it had to do with the regional banks.
Okay.
So again, regulations on regional banks. So Basel III capital requirements being applied to the big banks, yes, but why on the regional banks where, it's almost like big government versus small government,
Yeah.
and honoring the states versus overarching capital requirements on these minuscule banks. They should be able to regulate themselves or have they should be under a different jurisdiction, is what he was talking about.
Yeah, I saw that. He seems to be pro regional bank, right?
Yeah,
That there's this sense that the Federal Reserve is really just pro its own major banks, but not necessarily worried about regional. So he was kind of sticking up for the smaller guys, I guess,
yeah,
in
yeah,
that respect.
exactly. And
So
all the timing comes very, very key for me too. I think with this selection of for Vance, months ago it was the Wall Street Journal. They reported that the Trump administration and his advisors are considering plans to dramatically revamp the Fed. A few key points to take away from the Wall Street Journal were the Wall Street Journal reported that the plan is highly secretive and part of a 10-page document that suggests Trump, if elected, could be consulted on interest rate decisions. And along with those proposals, the draft also contends that Trump could remove Powell from office and require that the Fed policy be aligned with the administration's goals. And how it aligns to a strong dollar policy and how it aligns to the regulations and their goals. Their goals ultimately is to bring back the get revamping the Federal Reserve and ultimately safeguarding the U.S. dollar, which would mean gold standard. Jeremy, Vance's perspective on the
yeah.
gold standard reflects his broader economic policy. He has shown interest, according to Politico and Jewish Insider, that he has and he likes the concept of the gold standard and has been vocal about it in various forums. He's also expressed skepticism about the current monetary policy system and a return to the gold standard to impose discipline on the Federal Reserve and the broader financial systems. So he ultimately believes that the gold standard could help curb inflation and stabilize the economy by tying the value of money to a tangible asset. And this is it. US dollar is a gold-backed currency. It is not the Federal Reserve note or a fiat currency. So this is going to be a very interesting time to be following Vance and a Trump administration heading into the election cycle. Many questions: will there be an election? It's a very exciting time to be alive, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, I remember when Obama got elected and he started to talk about who his financial advisors were going to be, and they were basically everyone that was in Bush's cabinet. And
Of
I
course.
remember watching that thinking, oh, there's absolutely going to be zero change in the markets, and that's not going to, whether it impacts precious metals, I would say it can have an effect, but it's not the whole thing. It could have a 20% effect, a 30% effect, but there's
Mhm.
much, much bigger things happening. Obviously, the BRICS, the central banks are buying it around the world. Silver may be something that central banks start to look into purchasing. There's just much, much bigger economic things happening with the gold market itself to be affected by politics. That said, I think the Federal Reserve is a big, important piece, and how it gets handled is something that we have to keep an eye on. History has shown that presidents in the past. Now I know we're talking about a former president, but presidents in the past who have tried to get rid of the Federal Reserve or central banks have had attempts on their life, whether it's Jackson and obviously some are successful, some are not with Kennedy.
Right.
So, there's a lot at stake, and it's something that we'll continue to monitor. I think it was a good quick dig, little dive into this, and
Always digging, always digging.
we'll see what other kind of news hints about the potential future of the Federal Reserve, but it does look like they want changes, and I think that's probably a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you soon.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.